In my own business, I can speak to how it's helped to improve my communication with my tenants. It's more of a communication style where I can say to the tenant, listen, I manage the property, but it's owned by a company. The company has certain processes and systems. This is how we handle these things. And I can't deviate from that because I like you, or because you and I are friendly and we can have a nice conversation. And I know your situation is maybe a little bit different than the next guy. The bottom line is these are the systems that are in place and we have to follow them for you and everyone else involved. It really simplifies those conversations with your tenants.
Welcome to Courageous Stewards, the podcast where legacy meets leadership.
We believe stewardship isn't just about managing resources. It's about multiplying impact, honoring purpose, and building with eternity in mind. Each week, we dive into business-focused discussions on real estate investing on a foundation of faith and family.
We have a desire to inspire listeners with a heart to reclaim their time, talents, and treasures for something greater. Whether you're growing your portfolio, leading a business, or a family, we need to become the best version of ourselves.
This is your space to gain wisdom, walk in courage, and steward what matters most.
Let's build what lasts. Let's lead with love.
Let's become courageous stewards.
All right, welcome back, listeners. We got another episode here today. We're going to be jumping right into why systems matter more than that hustle that we all talk so much about being out in the grind and working and putting the time in. We really want to focus on making sure that we're developing systems around that hustle. That's going to make that hustle a lot less stressful. Most of us don't have really a rental problem. We have a systems problem. A lot of times when you get into the real estate space, it's pretty high stress at times. So you're like, I need less stress. You actually need more systems, and not just more systems, but good systems. So when we're talking about systems, we want things that are going to make what we do on the daily predictable, scalable, and peaceful, right? It's about eliminating the stress of decision making, where those emotions are in there on a regular basis, kind of swaying us back and forth between what the next step is. These systems are going to help us do that quickly, easily, and efficiently. And when you look at a system, the reason it's so helpful is it's like having a silent leader that's helping guide your team when you're not even in the room. And that's why there's so much value in good systems.
That's so true. Now, I don't want to give people the false idea that systems are going to be your top priority when you first get started. The bottom line is you have to start by hustling, and your systems are not going to be as efficient as you would probably like them to be right out of the gate. That's just the fact. You're going to figure it out kind of as you go. But having the mentality up front of I need a system, a standard operating procedure for this thing that I'm working through now. And if you set those up on the front end, you're a lot more apt to be able to grow beyond those limitations as you move forward, instead of maybe growing at a pace of one property per year. Because you've created systems along the way, you can elevate that growth or escalate it to a whole nother level where, the systems that you have in place can kind of help the business to run to some degree without you having to be so in the weeds.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
to speak.
Something we're going to give listeners today, like when we get into this, it's a really practical guide, is we're going to basically give you 5 things that are going to eliminate 80% of the stress that comes with being in this kind of business.
And you know what's so fun nowadays, and we're probably going to talk about this later on, but AI being what it is in our day and age really helps to simplify a lot of these operating procedures that you'll have to set up. It's no longer you sitting at a desk with a piece of paper and a pen and saying, what is step 1? Okay, now what is step 2? Now what is step 3? It's more of you tell AI what it is that you want to accomplish, and it will build it out for you. And then all you have to do is review and edit it for your liking.
Yeah, we've already used it to develop some of our SOPs that we're going to be going forward with. And it's a great starter for a template that you can then refine to your specialized focus or whatever your foundations are and change it.
I like that you said template, because it's not an end-all be-all. You should not put it in there and just follow its guidance from A to Z. It's something that you should use as a tool to get you to what you you want,
Yep.
but you still have to go through and review it and make sure that it aligns with what you're trying to accomplish specifically.
It's those nuances, those personal nuances to everybody's industry or business or personality.
Yep. So let's talk a little bit about what a system is. Basically, it's a repeatable process that you're going to do again and again and again. And you don't need these processes necessarily set up in every aspect of the business, but the ones that you intend to replicate over and over and over, you don't want it to be different every single time you place a tenant. Every time you have a maintenance order that has to be taken care of. Like, you can set these systems up to just know moving forward, this is how we do things and we don't deviate from it. And it really, in my own business, I can speak to how it's helped to improve my communication with my tenants. It's more of a communication style where I can say to the tenant, listen, I manage the property, but it's owned by a company. The company has certain processes and systems. This is how we handle these things. And I can't deviate from that because I like you or because you and I are friendly and we can have a nice conversation. And I know your situation is maybe a little bit different than the next guy. The bottom line is these are the systems that are in place and we have to follow them for you and everyone else involved. It really simplifies those conversations with your tenants. It's like, you're not my buddy, although we can be friendly. We have systems set up, and this is how we have to follow it. It makes it so much easier.
To that point, it's a boundary. It's an isolator from you in the business, and making sure it's not favoritism or emotions again, right? So you go back and you look at defining a system. You can have a binder in a drawer. You can have a checklist somewhere on your wall. It doesn't mean anything. When you sit down and you create these SOPs or these processes and these systems, the key is implementation and accountability.
Yes.
They don't do any good in a drawer. You have to be using them. So I started with a couple simple ones earlier. The screening one is a great example. Screening one is a great example of a good system.
Yep.
When you're looking at credit, evictions, criminal background, income, those are like really simple things to just look at and go or no go. So that's where that decision and that thought process comes out. Oh, I know this person, or they know my friend, and you're looking at it. It takes all that out of it. It's like they check this box, and this box. I'm definitely going to give them a call. So it eliminates that. When you're going to create a system, we're talking about sitting down, and you mentioned earlier the thought process. What's step one? There's sequence to it. So you need to define that. You need to create those steps. And again, AI is a great tool to help you get that template out where those steps are there. It'll help you think of steps you didn't think of for the process you're trying to develop, which I think has been fascinating. I think for me, that's been one of my most exciting parts of using AI. You need to test that process yourself a little bit. Run it a couple times on your own. Make sure it's giving you the results you want. And for that next step, it's measuring and quantifying what it's doing. Track it. If you've implemented this system and you're finding, man, my tenant retention just went up, or my tenants are liking this thing that I've now done a little differently, measure it and track it, and then use that feedback to finalize the process that you're trying to develop. Then that becomes an SOP that you can hand off to somebody else.
It's so funny you describe it that way. I remember when I first started in the rental space, I got around some OGs in the business. In small town, a lot of those OGs or guys that have some experience in the space, they don't have any systems that they've set up. And so you go and ask them, well, how do you handle the process of finding the proper tenant? Well, I just look at whoever has the money first and who is interested in the place. And if they have the money for the rent and the deposit, then I put them in there. And I'm like, that can't be the best way. That sounds really dangerous and very scary.
Leaving a lot off the table.
A lot. Yeah. And for that reason, you have tenants who haven't paid for 6 months. There's no lease agreement that they've signed because they went month to month after their, after their initial lease was over. And not that there's anything wrong with some of those things, but it should be spelled out and made very clear on how you're going to handle each and every step of this business. Now, in our situation, I can say that we use an online platform with all of our tenants, and we don't deviate from that. Everything we do, for the most part, goes through that. So payments go through our online platform. We have the application process that all goes through that platform. We don't sign physical paperwork, and not that you can't, but I'm laying it out, I guess, to give some clarity as to how we've set it up. If you set yours up differently than that, that's okay, as long as you systemize it and do it the same every time.
Yeah, because a good system is a repeatable process that anyone can follow. You should be able to hand that off. They should be able to read it, understand it. So be careful with your verbiage. I'm really bad at this, Jake. You've called me out several times, even on the podcast, where I'm talking and I put a phrase out there that I know, you know, and I think everybody else knows. And sometimes we got to draw back and go, okay, I may have to break this down a little bit. That way it's repeatable.
We said it at the beginning, the standard operating procedures. And through even in the last couple of minutes, we've gone back to SOP. And for us, that's natural conversation. I know exactly what you mean.
It's the easiest way to say it.
And I'm glad that now you know, our guests, or our listeners, I should say, know what SOP stands. But there's so many of those acronyms in this business that you just have to remember to be clear about everything, you know, to people who may not understand it completely. And that's okay. They're learning. They're your tenant. They're not an investor. They don't understand things necessarily like you do. So make it understandable for them and clear. They're not going to understand this business, nor should they, the way that you do.
I think that helps a lot. Oftentimes when you just tell them transparently what it is, what it looks like, and why it is that way, they go, oh,
I get
that
it.
makes more sense. Instead of just thinking it's your opinion and you're just being difficult, you know?
Right.
So you were jumping into it a little bit, but let's go into like the 5 core systems. We're going to jump into this part now where you can eliminate up to 80% of your stress in this industry with these 5 systems and making sure that they're good and are in place. Whether you're early on in your career or you've got a big portfolio, you would almost have to have these to be scaled up to large size. So if we dive into number 1 here, you're looking at a tenant screening process. Right? That one's pivotal. I had that one almost in day 1. Where I had a process in regards to who's going to be placed in my units. Now, this is a little bit different because it's going to depend on your market. We're in a high demand small town market. We have a lot of population and we have not enough housing. So there you get to be a little more selective. There are different markets where there's a lot of people and there's enough housing. So it's a matter of you've got to get people in, you got to get rent.
But typically in our small area, if we put something online, we'll have somewhere between 20 and 80 families who are interested in that unit within a 24-hour period.
A lot of messages, a lot of emails.
Yeah, complete chaos. So you definitely want to have a system that can handle that kind of craziness right out of the gate on a property that you have open. Now, I have some other property in some other areas that is far slower. I may list a property, or a unit, I should say, for rent, and it may sit for close to a month before I get much interest on it. And then you finally get somebody that you're like, okay, this could work, and we move forward with them. So there's a variable there. It's not necessarily going to go quick or slow, but your system, if it's in place right, it doesn't really matter. You can ebb and flow, you know, with whatever time frame you need to, because you follow the same system.
Follow the same system. Yeah, that's having that same criteria, the same questions, approval, denial, workflow, and you've got to be subjective. I still, my heart still gets pulled in sometimes to people and their stories, and I care and I want to help people. It's just naturally part of who I am, but it's at the same time you've got to take emotion out of the process. It has to be black and white. And the same for everybody, like you said earlier. That's also very important.
Right.
This is just how the business operates, this part of the business.
If you think about it, how can you steward well what the Lord has given you to steward if you don't have systems in place that you follow that get you to a place in your business where you can honor God in in your operations, in what you're giving? If you put folks in a property that are obviously not qualified, do not have the intentions of making their payments on time so that the business can run efficiently, so that you can then steward more and whatever God has entrusted you with, I think you have to kind of go back to that mentality on a regular basis of, am I running this the way that Christ would expect me to run it? the most efficient that I can, both for the sake of my tenants so that I'm taking the best care of them possible, but for the sake of the business and its efficiency so that I can continue to head and down a trajectory or up a trajectory that God has for me to grow and improve. And so that's kind of how I've looked at it as I've moved through this whole process.
That's good.
So we do the same thing with our systems and processes. We have, we run our background checks. Like I said, we use that online platform to go through. They can do maintenance requests online. There's a lot of things that are built into that platform. Yeah. And that's one of many, many platforms that are out there.
Oh, yeah.
The ones that I use are not super expensive, but there are other platforms out there that are more robust, but they come with a heftier price tag. Yeah. And you don't necessarily have to go that direction. However, if your end game goal is to be a specific size, at some point, there's going to be a lot of growing pains to move from one system to another system if you're having to change everything up when you get to a certain point. So consider that, I would say. There's going to come a point where you need systems in place and you don't have the funds to spend an astronomical amount of money for those systems. And there are systems out there for that.
Yeah, for sure.
But you're going to get to a point, if you're planning to grow, where you're going to have to kind of upgrade some of those systems into something that's kind of an all-inclusive package where you're not kind of cherry picking. This can do this and it's inexpensive, and that can do that and it's inexpensive. We're going to make them work together. Whereas some systems out there can kind of just do all of it for you. So I guess the idea would be consider that from the start, or if you have a few properties, what's your end goal and how do you want to move forward in the decision making now so that it doesn't cause you a bigger issue down the road when you have to switch everything over.
Yeah, for sure. So we looked at number one with tenant screening. We talked a little bit about the maintenance request system, which is how tenants submit, how they communicate when there is an issue, who you call when that comes. And so having some of those things in place. And what I like is actually, Jake, what you do with the maintenance requests, and I still need to work on getting mine set up that way, but you're making them go through your software, your platform.
Right.
Which I think is great. The reason that's great and the reason that creates efficiency is it's so easy to text.
Yeah.
So they will text you about anything because it's easy. If you say you need to submit the maintenance request to the software, they actually have to stop for a minute and go, am I going to put my time into this? If it's enough that it needs done, they're going to do it, and they're going to submit the maintenance request. But they'll text you about anything without actually trying. So I think it creates a little barrier, a little boundary there, which I really like.
And I don't want to give people this false idea that I have it figured out, because it's hard to get to a point where those efficiencies are in place. Most of my tenants still have my cell phone number.
Yeah, I still have a ways to go.
And it's a challenge. I will say what we have done is we've created a Google Voice number. We've given that Google Voice number out to folks. It still rings into my cell phone, and I communicate mostly, and then we have an admin who communicates some. However, it's good to set that up ahead of time if possible, and just don't give the tenants your specific cell phone. Give them the system and the process to follow. So for us, we ask them, if you have a maintenance order, go on your app, put the maintenance order in, we will see it, we'll communicate with you, and we'll get it resolved. But if you message me, I'm not going to respond to it because you know that that's not the system that we use. The only time that you should be reaching out to me directly is if there's an emergency. And if it's a significant emergency, call 911. Don't call me. If police or fire need to be involved.
Call 911.
So it kind of skips you in the whole process, and that's what you want.
Yes.
You don't want it to be personal. You want it to be business.
Yep.
You can still take care of them. You should take care of them, but there's a system and a way to do it.
Yeah. So that's awesome. Good tips on maintenance requests, and then rent collection. Having a system and a process around that. I know ours are a little different.
They are.
Mine, I probably got to change mine, because when I say mine out loud, I go, that's a weird system.
Yeah.
Which is funny, but mine's due on the 1st, obviously, late on the 3rd, and then my late fee incurs on the 5th. And it's like, shouldn't my late fee incur on the 3rd when the rent's late?
Yeah.
So I've got a little work to do even on mine as of right now. But you're talking about due date, late fee structure, having systems to automate reminders, and then when to escalate. When do you go to that next step in regards to maybe a notification, or hanging a document on the door for that 3-day pay or quit,
Yeah.
So having a process around that, again, taking the decision, you're going to give that one person an extra 20 days. If you just follow the system, get that thing hung on day 3.
Here's the thing that I think people need to understand if they're just getting started is that you're the king of your castle and you get to decide how you want to handle it. Just decide and stick with it.
Yep.
There's not a right or a wrong necessarily in most applications with what we're discussing. So is it wrong for you to ask for rent on the 1st?
No.
Late on the 3rd?
It's a different process.
Charge on the 5th?
Yeah.
No. There's nothing wrong with that. That's your system and that's okay. However, I'm not going to run mine the same way. And I was able to decide mine is due on the 1st. It's late on the 2nd and you're getting charged on the 2nd. And then every day thereafter. And it's not that I want to be a jerk to my tenants at all.
Yeah.
I don't want the late fees.
Right.
I want them to understand the rent is due on this specific date.
It's better for us that rent is just in on time and paid.
Right. And clarity creates positive action in return. If you keep everything vague, you're going to have so many problems with your tenant. But if you create clarity, this is the rule, this is what the expectation is, just follow that and we're good.
Yep. Yeah, I verbalize that on showings.
Yep.
Like if they're like, I think I'm interested, I'm like, awesome. I said, I'm excited to have you. I think it's going to work out great. However, I'm quick to evict. The notice will go up on the 3rd day, all this, and I give them that transparency like you said. I'm just like, this is a business and I operate it tightly, so I'm going to make sure that you get notified. And but yeah, it does improve. It's not, you're trying to be nice and like you said, vague. I think I'll work with you. Yeah, I'm excited to have you here.
So many
they don't know what
landlords
that
do
means.
that. Yeah,
and then they get settled in and they start kind of pushing the limits. Well, you didn't give them the limits in the first place.
Right.
Even if it's in the lease, I don't know how many leases I've had signed where I don't think anybody read anything. They just threw their signature on it. So tell them those key points of that lease and verbalize it with them. That way the surprises are out. You can say, no, we did talk about that. Remember when we were showing it? They need to know, and it does help. So we're going to look at moving on to number 4, which is turnover systems. I don't have a lot of this laid out myself, but this is where you're going to have that move-out checklist, maybe some cleaning standards, how you handle repairs, photos, and then relisting that unit. And just having a process around what that looks like is incredibly helpful.
I do have a little more of this laid out, and the larger you get, the more you have to have systems, primarily because you're going to become the person who manages the people doing the work rather than the person actually doing the work.
So true.
And so you need to have systems in place that are easily able to be followed by somebody else without you actually having to stand there and tell them every single time, change this outlet, change that fixture, paint this wall, change that toilet seat. Like, no, it's just all spelled out for you. We go in and we follow this checklist. First, we do a final inspection to make sure that everything is in order the same way as we gave it to the other tenant or the tenant that just moved out. If it is, then we return their deposit to them.
Sure.
If it's not, then we start to reduce their deposit based on the cost of what it's going to take to repair those given things. Don't just give them their deposit back because they moved out and then you cover the expense of whatever they trashed. They're responsible for it.
Yep.
Hold them to that.
You have to document it and make sure that they get an invoice back why the deposit is what it is.
Absolutely.
When you give them a partial deposit, but absolutely.
And these are all coaching and suggestions. It's not legal.
For sure.
We're not giving you any kind of legal advice or anything. Go talk to your attorney if you're questioning that. What we're just saying is this is how we handle it, and it's proven to work well in our situation. But I would say from that point, we have a standard paint color that we use in our apartments. We have a standard fixture, meaning lights and fans and that sort of thing. We have a standard hardware. We use these kind of doorknobs. We use these kind of slow close toilet seats that we swap out, those kind of things. Put them in some sort of a document that shows this is how we go through our process when somebody moves out, and it creates efficiency so that you're in, out, get it re-rented, and you're on to the next thing.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're going to flounder around and say, well, I like this one, but it's going to cost me $80 more for that one than the one that we normally use, and blah, blah, blah. No, we use these lights, we use these fixtures, we use this paint, go get it, put it in, done deal.
Yeah, that's good.
Tenants don't care. They want a nice, comfortable, warm, clean space to move into. Yep. And you're providing that for them and taking care of them through the process of them living there. They don't care whether they have a $300 fan or an $80 fan.
Yep.
If it works and it looks nice, it's good.
Yep, agreed. So we're going to move on to number 5, which is communication system, which you had talked a little bit about.
I jumped ahead too much. Sorry.
It's all right.
I wasn't really prepared for the 1 through 5 thing, and I kind of threw it all into one.
You got it all. You covered everything.
I sure did. But yeah, let's talk about communication a little
just
more.
having good things in place in regards to how you handle it. And Jake, I think you had a good example earlier with the Google Voice. That's for emergencies, not your personal number. And then I like to be prompt on communication. I know you do too. You value that same thing. But I've also learned to balance, like, is this worth jumping on right this second?
Yeah, it can wait.
I don't need to stop my whole day to respond to something that's minor that can be fixed. Let them know you've got it on your plate. You're going to get somebody over there eventually. So I've learned to do that. You can have some templates for some standard responses and messages, just letting them know, even if you just had it auto respond, we've received your message. We're going to look at what you're asking about and then kick it back. That way they know at least you've gotten it.
Right.
And then some documentation, of course, around what your communication system is going to look like. And especially, like you said, Jake, these things really start to become important the bigger you get. So as you get bigger, you're going to want to have that more refined and not just leave it up to this person's going to text me on my personal number, that one's going to Google Voice me, and then they'll put maintenance requests in the software, right? Because you're all over the place.
Right. Yeah. Internal systems are sometimes just as important as the external systems that you're working through with your tenant or potential tenant. You also have to have systems internally that keep everybody going the same direction and on the same page. And sometimes that's just one person, and you refer back to the documents that you've created prior, put them in a Google Drive, and you go back and look at them. How is it that I normally handle this? Because quite honestly, a lot of times you don't do this for an extended period of time. Yeah. And so you forget how you did it last time, and you're like, well, I'll do it this way this time.
I've had to go back and look at my own documents sometimes. Like, what did I tell her how to do this part of it? And I have to go back and look at my own and be like, oh, that's what I...
There's just as much value in that as there is in doing the same thing for the tenant's sake.
Yeah.
It helps you to create clarity and understanding in your own systems. And so you begin to just understand, I don't have to go back now anymore and look at it. I've done it a dozen times in the same manner. I know now this is exactly what we do step by step by step. And then you can teach somebody else to do that when it comes to a point where you need to step back and have a bigger picture view of what's going on and move the chess pieces a little bit more. Those people you turn things over to now can understand it better because you can just feed them both the document and it by heart. Boom, 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 do this, do this, do this. Okay, we're good. So the combination of both of those is important. I think one thing I do want to go back and say, just briefly touch on, is that you do want to run this as a business and look at it that way. And so communicating with your tenant is not necessarily important in 15 seconds of when they message you about something. And so if it's outside of business hours, consider that. And it can wait until the next day. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I would also say, treat people, your tenants are humans, and their comfort level a lot of times is in your hands. So treat them the way that you would want to be treated. I've heard so many horror stories about landlords who just ignore their tenants. You have an issue? I'll get to it when I get to it, whatever. Just keep living there. I'm giving you a good deal. That's no way to treat anybody, specifically you as a landlord or a manager towards your tenant. And so I would definitely encourage landlords and people who are thinking about becoming a landlord to understand it's a business, treat it as such, but also recognize that you're dealing with folks who have feelings, they have needs, and they're coming to you with those needs because you're the person who can resolve it for them. Yep. So get up and resolve it for them. Go take care of them.
Yep, right? I totally agree. So we don't call them even tenants. I try to always refer to them as a guest.
Guests. Absolutely.
You're a guest in our property. It helps me keep my mind around the fact that I got to get on this and I got to take care of this because I would like any guest I have to be happy and comfortable.
Yep.
Now, you don't need to, I'm not going to update the whole property or throw in marble countertops.
Of course.
But just overall, treat them as a guest and have that mentality. It's stewarding well with what you've been entrusted.
Yeah.
Because you've now got people that are involved. And so it's important that we do that.
Yeah, I agree. So those are the 5 things that you can implement and hopefully create some core systems around those items
Yeah.
to benefit your efficiency,
They're
I
the
guess.
5 heavy hitters for this space that would make a huge difference in your stress level.
Yeah. So what if we talk about some of the tools that help us run our business automatically?
Rent ready. Rent ready.
So that is one that we use. We're not affiliated with them. We don't get paid
No.
by them in any way, but
Not
it
at
has
all.
created a lot of those efficiencies for us.
I have a small portfolio, but Rent Ready, I think if I had to pick the single best thing that I've spent money on in this whole space, it's Rent Ready. That software management is simple, easy. It's not a heavy hitter one. It's not like the larger ones that are more comprehensive and handle a ton of the tasks that you need.
Yeah.
But for someone with a portfolio size that I've got, Rent Ready is really effective in regards to managing rent payments, communications, and things like that. At leasing, placing, it's been awesome. The screening process is all in there. So just looking at property management software as one of those avenues for automation.
Yeah, and I mean, you can look all these up on Google
There's a
or whatever.
bunch
We
of
can
them.
throw names out there. Like if your plan is to be a larger company or you're heading that direction, maybe Buildium would be another one that you may want to consider. It has a much more robust platform and it can do a lot of things. Rent Ready is great. It's very inexpensive and it does a lot of things, but it does have some limitations. Now that is primarily on the long-term rental side. So what if somebody has a couple of properties and their primary focus is short-term? Well, there are platforms that can be used on the short-term side as well that will couple all of your calendars, all of the sites that you have your property listed on. It will manage your communications automatically for you. The one that we use is called Hostaway. There's one called Hostfully. There's one called Guesty. There's a lot of other ones out there, but it basically will create those same efficiencies on the short-term side for you. Now, if you only plan on being on, say, Airbnb, which you have a property that's on Airbnb, and that one, you can do a lot of those same things.
Yeah.
And you only pay a fee when someone comes and stays in your spot. There's a percentage that comes out of the amount that the guest pays. So you can go that route too. If you just have one unit and you want it on one site, that may be an option for you. But just some things to consider.
For sure.
The efficiencies that we have put in place have drastically improved the amount of time that we have to spend on the short-term stuff because it's a lot more labor intensive. You're in the hospitality business at that point. And so you have to be a lot more attentive to your guests' needs. They need attention now, not tomorrow, now. So something to consider on that front. And then the storage space we're also in, and there are efficiencies with software that we use for that. We use a company called Storganize. There's also another one that's well known called Storable. Among other things, accounting, some of these, there's Stessa is an accounting software that's used primarily for real estate. There's accounting softwares within some of these other platforms that can be utilized as well. We use Wave for accounting on some of our stuff. So it's really about seeing what's out there, what's going to work best for you and your price point, and then making them work with each other.
Yeah, for sure. Lean into that property management, those softwares that are out there. And then communication tools, there's different softwares out there for that, especially with the AI wave. You can have it set up some of these automations in addition to your communication softwares. If you're using Google Voice or communicating even through your platforms, Gmail, or whatever it is you're using.
Yeah, and a lot of times the best thing to do is just to create a Google account and use the efficiencies that Google Workspace gives you to use. Most everything, you can store it on there, you can create your documents on there, and that's kind of a central location for you as you move forward. They're going to improve. You're not going to do it perfect the first time. You're going to have to go back and adjust it.
Yeah.
We all understand that, but put something in place and a place where you can go find it easily and then build off of that as you grow. So some things to think about.
All right, so just to wrap this one up, just looking at the 5 core things that have systems for that are going to help you with a lot of the stress that comes with being in this space. Making sure you've got a good tenant screening system, having a good maintenance request system in place, rent collection, turnover, and communication. I mean, those are just going to be really pivotal to your efficiency, your stress level, and your operations when you get into the real estate space. Or if you already are, you can greatly improve your processes with good systems. These are practical steps that are not only going to save you time and stress, but they're going to save you money. So when you're looking back at having a faster turnover, right there, you've got fewer vacancy days. So you're going to have that next person in happier and have rent sooner. Better screening is going to be pivotal to your evictions. If you're just putting people in quick, you're running your eviction rate risk up high, and that can get expensive and add up. So making sure your screening is good is going to save you a lot of money. Organized maintenance and delegation. Jake, you were touching on that earlier. It's just quickly being able to have those things in regards to even what you're going to put in every unit already systemized. There's going to be fewer issues and fewer circle backs and decision making around that. And then having clear communication. Something that's going to create inefficiencies and cost you time and money is misunderstandings. So making sure you've got clear communication. So just referring back to the foundation of stewardship, this is really about the systems being able to allow you to honor your time, your tenants, and your properties.
Yeah. And I think I would probably say the most important thing to start with is your communication. Because once you've kind of established where your communication needs to be, how you're going to communicate with your prospective tenants or your current tenants, a lot of these other things like the screening process, the maintenance process, some of those other processes, you'll begin to think along the lines of how do I want to communicate or how do I want them to communicate for this specific topic or task. Mm-hmm. And so once you've established this is how I am going to communicate with my tenants or prospective tenants, and this is how I want them to communicate with me, you can sort of build the other things around that desire in your business. So I would start there this week if you can figure out that communication piece and then start to develop your screening process, your maintenance process, your rent collection process, turnover process. And all of those will kind of fall into place a little bit based on your communication style and what you hope to gain, both communicating with them and them with you. So start to establish that. Hopefully you guys have gotten some value out of this. This is a lot more practical information maybe than some of the previous, encouraging podcasts that we've done in the past. And we want to bring you more of this practical knowledge. Hopefully it can help you progress through the process of maybe you have the intention of only owning one or two properties throughout your lifetime, and maybe you want to grow to thousands. It doesn't really matter. The processes and systems still have to be in place to do that. Obviously, they're going to grow and change based on the size of your portfolio, but a lot of the information remains the same, and it starts with a good foundation. Hopefully this helps you guys. We love you. We are so thrilled that you guys come and listen to us when you could be listening to anybody. We understand that, and we appreciate it very much. So go create systems, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks for joining us today on Courageous Stewards, where legacy meets leadership and faith fuels the journey.
If this episode stirred something in you, share it with someone who's ready to step boldly into their calling. Subscribe, leave a review, and stay connected as we continue to explore what it means to lead with conviction, serve with excellence, and build with eternity in mind.
So until next time, keep showing up, keep stewarding well, and remember, courage isn't the absence of fear, it's obedience in motion.